Well, I'm losing in sleeper. That was already predetermined before the week even started because my two running backs were Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. So that was already predetermined. But better yet, I had Mike Evans and Rashid Shaheed and Jameson Williams all playing, and Baker
You have
Mayfield
James
starting
Conner too while
quarterback.
you're at it.
The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Students of the Game. My name is Alex Baumann, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Gray Oldenburg and Nathan Glidewell. Nathan, no Alabama football this past weekend. Gray, you wish there was no Auburn football this past weekend.
Right.
That was something else. Let's talk about the Auburn Tigers since there's no Alabama to talk about. Gray loses 24-14 at home to Arkansas, suffers their second home loss this season, and falls to 2-2. And you look at the early part of their schedule, all of its home games. The expectation, including the Oklahoma game, which y'all were going to be 4-1 at the worst. Should it be unbeaten, and that one loss should have been to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But now you're sitting at 2-2. Oklahoma game is a gettable game after you saw the Tennessee game where their offense looked atrocious. Jackson Arnold could not do anything. Had the backup Michael Hawkins come in. That was a whole different story there. But with what has happened with Auburn, where do they go from here?
That's a great question, and I really hope this staff and Hugh Freeze know the urgency of figuring out the answer to that question specifically this week. Yeah, you're right. Coming into the season, you wanted to be at this point 4-0, and I was really excited for this Oklahoma game, coming into the season, not only because it's the big marquee home game this year. I love going to Auburn home games, but it's also, it was going to set up for a ranked matchup, possibly. If you got a 4-0 Auburn team coming in, and if they've won 4 straight, and you got an Oklahoma team who, no matter what was going to happen in that Tennessee game, they were going to be, highly sought after and ranked and that sort of thing. So I was excited about the matchup, but now it just kind of, I don't know. Speaking specifically on Auburn's 24-14 loss to the Arkansas Razorbacks, I've got 2 things. I'll keep it short. I'll keep it down to 2 things because it really does only come down to 2 things. Let me say before I say these 2 things, outside of these, Auburn played a really good football game Saturday. Had some really good bright spots on the defensive side, especially on first and second down. The defensive backs looking extremely better compared to what we saw against California and New Mexico. It was great to have Kane Lee back healthy. Obviously, we're going to really miss Champ Anthony with a broken leg after he annihilated that Arkansas receiver the play before. That's going to be a huge hit, but you want to see guys like Antonio Kite and JC Hart really take that next step, and it's next man up. It's next man up. You saw Keontae Scott go back to nickel. He was very good in today's game or in Saturday's game. The defensive line was continuing to do great things, getting pressure on the quarterback, making Taylor Green beat them through the air as well. I think that was a big part of the game plan. I think DJ Durkin had a good plan going in, as well as Hugh Freeze and Derek Nix on that offensive side, because receivers were running wide open. And we talked about this after the Cal game. We talked about this after the New Mexico game. And we're going to talk about it now. This game was not on the offensive game plan, nor was it on the wide receivers or the offensive line, because the offensive line has gotten better and better week by week for Auburn, especially, getting healthy, allowing Xavier Miller to get back to his right tackle spot completely healthy. I know there were some guys banged up in that wide receiver room, including Cam Coleman, the 5-star freshman. He wasn't completely healthy. But it comes down to 2 things. And I think if these 2 things were slightly different and changed a little bit more in Auburn's favor, Auburn wins this game by 3 touchdowns. And we're not even talking about this. We're talking about the Oklahoma game and talking about what's next. Turnovers and third down defense. Okay, let's start with the turnovers. We have got to find a freaking quarterback that stops throwing the ball to the other team. Just, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Hard to do.
It's apparently we've got receivers running wide open. Hugh Freeze and Derek Nix are scheming against these defenses beautifully. And he's got these talented receivers. He got really talented tailbacks. His offensive line was absolutely great. But we still got quarterbacks not even looking at these wide open receivers, making the wrong reads, and when they make the right reads, not making the throw. And it goes back to this offseason when Auburn had the opportunity to go after a transfer portal quarterback. And, you know, I'm not saying you had to bring him in to start, and he would be starting now, but bring in a guy to compete. And they didn't do that. And I think that decision is coming back to bite Hugh Freeze and Derek Nix right now because they're not able to execute the way that they know they can with the talent they have around the quarterback without the quarterback. You know, Hank Brown in this game makes the first few throws really nice, and then it looks like he panics and makes wrong read after wrong read after wrong read. And all of a sudden you're sitting there with 3 interceptions. You got to pull him. So the second half, Hugh goes back to Peyton Thorne, and looking at the stat sheet, Peyton Thorne didn't do that bad. He ended up with 213 yards of passing in just one half and 2 touchdowns. Thorne didn't look that good either. He had an interception. I know it was off the hands of Cam Coleman, but that was not a good ball. I understand you got to catch it, but Thorne also had some missed throws and some misreads as well. It's the entire quarterback room, and I don't understand why Auburn, a place with true rich history at the quarterback spot, is struggling, or quote unquote did struggle to get a transfer quarterback this offseason. And this is the product you're putting on the field. And this is the kind of quarterback product you're putting on the field. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. This team should be 4-0. This team is talented enough to have blown out everyone that they've played so far. And this team is talented enough to still win 7 games this year. But it's so hard to envision that because of what you've got at the quarterback spot. And now Freeze has to make a massive decision. He has gotten good and bad sample sizes from both his quarterback 1 and his quarterback 2, Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown. He's had really good from both of them, and he's had really bad from both of them. Where does he go from here? Does he say, screw it, we're going to put the true freshman Walker White in. He's going to make true freshman mistakes, but at least he's going to build experience. That's what Gus Malzahn did in 2019 with Bo Nix. Nix made freshman mistakes every game, but it built up his experience enough to by 2021, before his injury, he was playing incredible for Auburn under Brian Harsin. And then he decides to transfer and tears it up out in the Pac-12. Now he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. So do you go that route with Walker White? Do you have a quarterback battle this week between Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown? I don't know. And that is a huge question that they have to answer. There's so many times in this, there's so many turnovers in this game that cost Auburn easy points that completely changed the game. So just that will change the game in the first place. But I do want to talk about the third down defensive efficiency, specifically on 3rd and long. Auburn's defense played outstanding in this game, played well enough to win easily, especially without the turnovers and the really good field position that Arkansas was getting possession after possession after possession. And they would get Arkansas to these third and 10, third and 13, third and 9, third and 18, third and 19 or something like that. And guess what they would do? They would rush 3 linemen. Now, I have an issue with rushing 3 linemen for many, many reasons. I don't understand, especially with the pass rushers that you have on this team. You know, first down, you get an incomplete, they throw an incomplete pass. Second down, Jalen McLeod or Keldrick Falk or who knows? Phil Bleedy makes an incredible play on the defensive end, gets a tackle for loss or a sack or something like that. And then on third and 19, you don't heat up a young quarterback who's playing in his first true SEC road game over and over again, and he's just allowed to do whatever he wants on third down. There are so many possessions that Auburn could have gotten back, not just with the turnovers, but with the third down defense as well. Arkansas had an average third down distance of 7.8. On downs, on third and shorts to third and medium, which is third and 8 or less, Arkansas was 2 of 6. In third and longs, which is third and 9 or more, Arkansas was 6 of 9. You cannot win a game in the SEC with that kind of defense, especially when you're playing so well on first and second down. Going forward, I have no idea what to think about this Oklahoma game. Normally 3-4 weeks into the season, you kind of get an identity of what your team is about. I think Auburn is one of the only teams in the country that, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think he knows. But and that's pathetic. You can't have that. You can't continue to execute like that, especially when, yes, you blame the coaching. Yes, you put this on the head coach. Yes, it starts with the head coach, especially the turnovers and stuff like that. But Freeze and Nix and this offensive staff are getting these talented receivers and running backs wide open. There's nobody near them. Keandre Lambert-Smith was targeted 10 times in this game, had 5 receptions. Only one of them was a drop. But of his 10 targets, there were also 12 more times in the 12 more plays in this Arkansas game where Lambert-Smith had at least 5 yards of separation on his route on his receiver. And he only got 10 targets. That is unbelievable. That is, you can't have that. You can't have that. And I don't know what this means going forward for the quarterback position, but my goodness, if it continues to look like that, you will finish 4-8 at least. I think 4-8 is generous, honestly. But this team is talented enough to still go 7-5, even though you started 2-2. You've got to figure out the quarterback spot.
I would say y'all could run the Wildcat, Gray, but y'all might fumble the football at the running back position.
Exactly. We can't hold on to the ball. It's unbelievable. It's a turnover problem, team wide. I understand a lot of it's focused on the quarterbacks with the interception, but Auburn is also 6th in the country in yards per play. They're 1st in the country in yards per rush. They're like top 20 in total offense, all of these considered. But they are last in the country in interceptions and 2nd to last in the country in turnover margin. And that is the difference between dominating 4 games against Alabama A&M, Cal, New Mexico, and Arkansas and being 2-2.
To my knowledge, Gray, Auburn has 14 turnovers, most in the country, and is tied with Temple for worst turnover differential at the -10 in the country. So being tied with Temple in anything is a little bit scary. And it being turnover differential is even scarier.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan, as an outsider here and not an Auburn fan like Gray, what are your thoughts on the Tigers and how they go from here, being 2-2?
Yeah, I'm just gonna take just a minute here because Gray really touched on everything I wanted to touch on. He pretty much summed it up pretty well. First of all, I want to start with Arkansas. I know we don't really we want to focus on Auburn here, but I want to talk about Arkansas and where they are in the Sam Pittman cycle. Obviously have not looked great the past few years. There was one year where they were like, oh, they're a surprise team, dark horse in the SEC, and now they haven't looked incredible. Going back to the game against Oklahoma State, not knowing how to finish a football game, that cost them looked shaky against UAB last week, and then they come out this week and they pick up a win. I'll be they did not look well doing it. I mean, they had their own struggles, but I will say, Taylor Green at the quarterback position, he's figuring out how to pass the ball. I mean, I know he had 2 turnovers in this game, through 2 interceptions. That's going to happen when you're a young quarterback. But the way he was able to extend Arkansas's possessions by being able to run out of the pocket on 3rd down and just create something, that says a lot about what he's able to do. He's just the playmaker at that offense. Also, I wanted to touch on Jaquindon Jackson. I think he's one of the best running backs in the SEC. He's done a fantastic job at Arkansas this far. And I mean, for them to go on the road and get this win is nothing short of incredible. Because last year Arkansas got tossed around at home by the Auburn team with Peyton Thorne at quarterback. So it says a lot about the transition that they have made this year. Now flipping over to the other side, talking about Auburn, you're not going to win a game when you turn the ball over 5 times. That's the sum of it. You can't expect to win a game when you turn it over 2 times. I mean, turning the ball over at all, you can't really expect to win a game. Not to mention turning it over 5 times. Looking at Hank Brown and some of the decisions he made, I mean, they were idiotic decisions, but they were also inexperienced decisions that he made. And it comes down to him just not being comfortable in the pocket, him forcing throws that didn't need to be thrown in the first place. And he's young, so I give him a little bit of a reprieve there. And to have him benched in the second half, was it the right move? Yeah, probably, but I know it does not help his confidence. But at this point, you got to do what you got to do to try to win. When Peyton Thorne stepped in, I thought he picked up where he left off. Obviously, he turned the ball over, and it's kind of 50-50 between him and Cam Coleman on whose fault it was. But at some point, you just got to accept responsibility and move on. But I thought after that, he did a pretty good job. He created stuff. He threw 2 touchdowns. He really got the Auburn offense moving that had struggled that far into the game. And I mean, for the most part, Auburn had plays where they could have moved the ball down the field effectively and they could have scored on multiple drives. But what the problem was, they didn't make the correct reads. And you know, when you throw the ball to the other team and in possessions like that, and your defense is on the field 90% of the time, you can't expect to win the football game. Another thing, I think Auburn needs to start enforcing the running game more. I know you fumbled. All right, fumbles are going to happen. I mean, I think it was more of just Arkansas making a great play rather than not having ball security. Something like that's going to happen. It's bound to happen. And unfortunately, it happened in the game where your quarterbacks combined for 4 interceptions. That's just the reality of it. But Auburn needs to get to this point where if you cannot throw the ball correctly, if there's not a quarterback that can step up on the roster and make the correct reads time and time again, then this running back room needs to step up. And I know Jarquez Hunter can do this. I mean, he had 12 carries for 67 yards. That's not terrible. But what you want to see is him having 20-something carries for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, something crazy. Where you're just constantly running and tiring these opponents out on the defensive end. And when you have to throw the ball, you have the ability to throw it out of an RPO where the defense is already tied into looking at the run game and they get caught being undisciplined and looking in the backfield, and you're able to make these big plays off RPOs. Something like that, it will help this Auburn team tremendously at this point in the season. Obviously, with the quarterback issues, you can't keep relying on them to have this more of a spread style of football. You can't expect them to throw down the field every single time and make the correct reads. And you know, this week leading into the Oklahoma game, you're going to have to find someone on the roster who wants to be that leader in on the offensive side of the ball. And you got to look at this quarterback room and say who wants to step up and who wants to lead the team to win. At this point, I think Peyton Thorne's your best bet. I mean, he is more athletic than Hank Brown is. He's able to be a little bit more mobile. He has the experience, but he still makes mistakes. But at this point, he's probably going to give you your best opportunity to win. He's shown it in the past. It's a mess, but for any Auburn fan out there that thought that they were going to do tremendous things this season, I mean, the reality of it is this roster is still very young and inexperienced. We touched on it when we talked about the receiving core in the offseason. There's still a lot to do with the people they brought in through the transfer portal, how they mesh together. I think through 4 games, it's starting to get to the point where you expect them to kind of have that feel for how someone's going to do something. But I mean, Oklahoma's not an easy opponent. I know they went and just got embarrassed at home by Tennessee. It's the most embarrassing 25-point score you give up to Tennessee, but they got to figure things out in the offensive end. So Oklahoma has very similar issues to what Auburn has. And if you thought Auburn versus Arkansas is bad, if Auburn comes out and makes the same mistakes they did against Arkansas, and Oklahoma has made the same mistakes that they had against Tennessee, I don't know if anyone wants to watch that game. I mean, that's future right there. But look, if you're an Auburn fan, it's okay to be upset and to be mad at losing. No one likes to lose. I don't like to lose. I get very upset when Alabama loses. But you need to keep in mind the bigger picture of where Auburn could be next year or the year after or down the line because of what Hugh Freeze has done in recruiting. And if he can develop people and he can coach James a little bit better, then I think Auburn will be in a fine spot. But at this point in time, you can't expect to just go and win all these games because what is it looking like? You lost some of your easier games this season, and you have Oklahoma at home, but then you go on the road for like 3 straight games, and those are not easier games too. And at this point, I don't expect them to make a bowl game. I expect 5-7 as probably the record from what I've seen. Maybe they'll surprise me. Maybe Hugh Freeze will pull something out. But right now, I mean, I don't think you should have expectations of the season to be anything close to good. But next year, though, next year.
Brian Harsin set this program back at least 3 years, maybe even 4, depending on what Hugh Freeze does. Now, that's all thanks to the potato farmer from Idaho.
Amen.
Let's talk about some other games around the country. North Carolina got blasted by James Madison,
Lord.
70-50. I was unaware that college basketball started in September, but North Carolina said, yes, we start in September, and allowed James Madison to score 70 points. Mac Brown, college football has passed you by, sweetie. Time to retire. I mean, you were washed when you got destroyed by Alabama 2009 BCS National Championship. It's time. Love you, buddy, but it's time to go ahead and retire like Nick Saban. In the toilet bowl of the SEC, Florida beat Mississippi State 45-28. Another game like Auburn, Oklahoma this coming up weekend where it's hard to watch regardless of if you're cheering for or if you're cheering for anyone. I mean, both these programs in terrible spots. Number 11, USC falls to number 18, Michigan, after Khalil Mullings runs it in with 37 seconds left. Michigan ends up passing for 32 yards. Not sure what USC was doing while we're not playing goal line defense at that point. If you've seen that Alex Orji cannot push the ball down the field, but that's USC for you and their defense, even though it did look a little bit better. Number 16 used a second half. Number 16 LSU used a second half surge to escape UCLA 34-17, but it ended up losing their star linebacker Harold Perkins for the season with a torn ACL. Huge loss for an LSU defense that is already crappy as is, and to lose your stud defender, your go-to sack getter, is tough. Number 23, Northern Illinois falls to Gray's favorite team, Buffalo, in overtime 23-20. And then behind a career day for Micah Bernard, the running back, number 12, Utah beat number 14, Oklahoma State 22-19. I don't know where Ollie Gordon has gone. He has been a non-factor this season, only had 42 rushing yards this game with 11 carries. Not sure what Oklahoma State's doing with their talented running back. Number 7, Missouri avoids a big upset and beats Vanderbilt 30-27 in overtime. That was a game in which kickers decided they didn't know what they were doing. Mizzou's kicker was 3 of 6, and then Vandy's kicker was 2 of 5. Granted, some of those field goals are pretty long and pretty difficult, but still, do your job. then, as we've talked about earlier in the show, number 6 Tennessee beat number 15 Oklahoma 25-15 in one of the boringest games I've personally ever watched in that night slot. And then Florida State beat Cal 14-9 for the first win of the season. That probably makes Ray feel a lot better that Florida State beats Cal after watching DJU play. I mean, he's probably worse than the Auburn's quarterback room. Number 24, Illinois beat number 22, Nebraska 31-24 in overtime. Colorado beat Baylor 38-31 in overtime after Dave Aranda doesn't know how to call a prevent defense at all. Victory cigar doesn't work. I'm sorry, Dave. LaJohntay Webster caught that touchdown, and Travis Hunter got the forced fumble at the goal line. The team stormed the field against Baylor, or Colorado fans stormed the field against Baylor. Not sure. I mean, that to be that low of a program and rush the field against an unranked Baylor team. I mean, what are we doing? You're not beating a top 10 ranked Baylor team. You're beating a terrible Baylor team that might not make a bowl game this season and might lose their head coach midway through the season, the way he's been coaching. And the last thing, BYU beat number 13 Kansas State 38-9. I know y'all are looking forward to that beefy 5-layer burrito guy on Twitter. He posted earlier today. He's doing it September 28th. It's going to happen. He's not going to chicken out like the Florida State guy. So, any of these games y'all think warrant some further discussion of what happened this past weekend?
Oh, okay. Warrant further discussion. Well, I'm going to kind of lead this into separate discussion because we have kind of touched on this game a little bit, and it was just a boring game to watch. It was the primetime Oklahoma and Tennessee game. Let me talk about the two different teams, two different scenarios, two completely different scenarios here. I think Tennessee has solidified themselves as a top 5 team in the country. I think the more and more experience Nico gets, the better and more calm he looks. They are extremely talented on the outside. They've got probably the best front 7 in maybe all of college football. It seems like this is the Tennessee from the Philip Fulmer days. Tennessee had 15 down years to lead to that 2022 season and to this one. Because, with all the Butch Jones and the Jeremy Pruitt and all those years, this Tennessee team is outstanding. They're deep. They're talented at the positions that you have to be talented in to be successful in the SEC. I think their schedule looks very promising from here on out. They have 2 big games, obviously, against their 2 rivals in Alabama and Georgia. Getting Alabama at home is good. I really want to see how Alabama looks against Georgia this upcoming week to make my, to kind of make my opinions on both Bama and Georgia. But I firmly have an opinion on Tennessee as one of the best teams in this conference, and I look forward to seeing what they do moving forward. And for Oklahoma, it's very similar to where do we go now? We're 0-1 in the SEC. What do we do now? Because it doesn't get any easier. Obviously the game at Auburn this week, Auburn's not in a good spot, but that's a tough place to play. And then Oklahoma still has to play Alabama later on. I think they play Ole Miss as well. It's a tough schedule. Oklahoma's got to figure out an identity on offense, just like Auburn, just like a lot of teams in college football. They've got to figure out their identity on offense, whether that's going with the backup quarterback like they did and sticking with it, putting Jackson Arnold back in, but replacing 5 offensive linemen from a year ago. I don't care how good that Oklahoma defense is. They're going to have to be able to score some points to beat some of their top teams on their schedule.
For me, I think Missouri Vanderbilt.
Yes, I'm so glad you.
Yeah, sitting down to watch this game. I really liked what I saw from Vanderbilt. I mean, Clark Lee has done a fantastic job with coaching this season. Bringing in Diego Pavia was probably the biggest off-season decision that we didn't really talk about. I think he was probably one of the best quarterbacks in the transfer portal that we just didn't even discuss. But what Vandy was able to do on the road at Missouri was very, very interesting. I thought that they were able to make some great plays. Diego Pavia just makes fantastic decisions in the pocket, and then on third down, he's just able to run the ball. I mean, he is fast. I didn't even realize how fast he was, but he is fast. Missouri's even struggled time and time again to cover easy passes. They couldn't get out the field when they needed to. And then on the flip side, Missouri's offense looked horrible. I mean, besides Brady Cook being able to throw the Luther Bird, and they were basically sending their punt team out there every single time. So that was bad. And then, not to mention the special teams on both ends. I mean, I feel bad for Vandy because I really thought that they were going to win this game. They were in position. Corkley coached a fantastic game, put them in position to win. And it just comes down to your kicker not making a simple field goal. Now, it's easy for us to come here and sit on here and say, well, the kicker should have done the job. I know that I would not be able to kick a field goal. I'm pretty sure all of us would struggle at kicking field goals. But
you got that guy on a college game day.
But we did not get scholarships to these universities to go kick a football. That is the difference. So if you want to continue to keep your job as a starting kicker at your selective university, make the kicks, help your team out. Vanderbilt could very well be undefeated at this point in the season if things go differently, which is a scary thing to talk about. Vanderbilt is taking a huge step forward this season, and even in losses, they have looked good. I expect Corkley to keep doing a fantastic job the rest of the season. I know it's not going to be easy. Coaching at Vanderbilt never is. Just ask James Franklin. But this next season, if they can replicate it again, maybe Vandy is just not the bottom of the SEC anymore.
Okay.
Maybe they have surpassed.
Mississippi State's got them beat.
Mississippi State, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, there's a tier. We can get out tiers and say here.
There is tiers, yeah.
Mississippi State and Florida.
Yeah, that's the bottom. You said it. It was the toilet bowl. Nathan, you just said that you didn't know Diego Pavia was fast. As an Auburn fan, I knew Diego Pavia was fast. I knew he was one of the better, talents into the transfer portal, but I didn't know his talent would translate to week by week SEC play. We knew he was experienced. We knew he was talented. We knew he could run. We knew he could, win big games. But what Clark Lee has done with that Vanderbilt team, they could easily be undefeated. He could easily be head of coach of the year right now because of what he's done. They're talented and they're deep. That's something that no Vandy team has been in a long, 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 long time. And I think it should have, some excitement should be around that program. But talking about Missouri, overrated. Oh my gosh. I understand you have some pro players at pro positions, like the quarterback. Brady Cook will be a backup quarterback in the NFL. And he's experienced and he played a lot of football. And Luther Burden's an outstanding wide receiver, will be a first-round draft pick. But people were having them ranked over Tennessee and Ole Miss. No, not even close. Missouri is in that second tier of team this year. And I think they're still in the third tier in terms of program in the SEC. But just because they beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl last year and had a pretty good year last year with a pretty easy schedule in the SEC East with no non-conference. They're playing the school for the blind in their non-conference last year and this year. But people were telling me, I had people telling me on Twitter that they were going to be better than Tennessee. Come on. You got to be joking.
I think it's funny that Vandy's 2-2 and Auburn's 2-2 are two vastly different things.
Very.
We're like, what is going? The house is burning down on the plains, and then Vandy celebrating that they're 2-2. It's funny the parody of college football and how that all works out. The game I like to point out is USC losing to Michigan, and Michigan throwing for 32 passing yards. like I said when I previewed the game, USC. Why are we not stacking the box? I know you have to still play the pass because Michigan will throw the ball when they want to. They do it 12 times for 32 yards, a whole lot, but they still have weapons out there, so you can't really just ignore the receivers. But do you not have a defensive line that can stop it? What was the defense coordinator doing for USC? Michigan can thank their defense for this game. The Grant and Graham tackles they have on defense are amazing. Those guys were putting Miller Moss on his rear end all night. Josiah Stewart is going to be in Miller Moss's nightmares for the rest of the season.
Yes.
I mean, he was everywhere.
Yeah,
so Michigan can credit their defense for winning this game, but USC's inability to stop the running attack, which is all Michigan was doing, is mind-boggling to me. Even with this win, it's a ranked win for Michigan. This doesn't make me think any different in Michigan. No. They're not very good. Their defense is above average. It can be elite when it wants to be. Their offense is terrible. And this team is not going to compete in the college football playoff if they even make it. You're not going to go play Alabama and have no passing attack and win a football game. This isn't 1920. You can't run the triple option, Sharon Moore. It's not going to happen. So moving on from college football and talking about the NFL, Nathan made us talk about this last week because the Panthers issues. And we're going to talk about this week due to the Saints issues. Saints lose to the Eagles 15-12. With a minute left, on 3rd and 16, Philly tight end Dallas Goedert is just streaking down the field, wide open. Nobody within a country mile of the dude, and sets up a 61-yard catch, sets up the game winning rush from Saquon Barkley. And then the Saints do get the ball back, but Derek Carr, the offensive line, forgets football's a thing. They're already at the bus. Doesn't block for him. Derek Carr throws it in triple coverage, picked off. Saints lose 15-12 to the Eagles. Thank you, Rashid Shaheed. I just want to point this out. Thank you, Rashid Shaheed, for your 0 receptions on 5 targets. Screwed my fantasy team over. Playing Nathan, actually. So I appreciate your inability to play football, too. But Nathan, Saints. Was this the game where they came back down to earth?
I mean, this is the NFL we're talking about. And if you expected the Saints to put up 40 points again against a good Eagles defense, I mean, you might have been smoking something. But did I expect the Saints to win? Yes, fully. Should they have won? Yeah. But this is why you play full games. You play the full 60 minutes or however long the game is, because stuff like this happens. The Saints had struggled on offense. Eric McCoy goes down the first possession of the game. We had to reshuffle the line, and they just absolutely crap their pants. The interior of the offensive line craps their pants. They see Jalen Carter lined up, and they're like, okay, go ahead and come on through. I guess they're scared because he's a Georgia player, and he probably has a car somewhere. But Derek Carr, I thought he made the right reads. He made the right reads. He made the right plays when he needed to. We were able to move the ball, and then we would get to the other side of the field, and then we couldn't convert. We would try to run the ball, and we couldn't run block. And that was the big difference. If you go back and watch the Saints play in week 1 and week 2, they were able to run the ball so effectively to the outside that they were just able to get in these scenarios where it was always 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2. And then you come out in this game and you have to face adversity because you're in 3rd and 8 because you're not able to run the ball. And that's a hard thing to do. That's a hard position to put Derek Carr in. Guaranteed he made plays. He threw it to Chris Olave when he was open. He was able to find Alvin Kamara for big games. And they go down with 2 minutes left and they go take the lead. He threw a beautiful pass to Chris Olave in the end zone. Guaranteed we don't convert on the 2-point conversion. And that sucked. But you expected the way your defense was playing all game. I mean, they had Jalen Hurts in hell. He was struggling. Saquon Barkley was the only. I mean, him and Dallas Goedert were the only 2 sources of offense for the Eagles after Devontae Smith went out with a concussion. So it came down to stopping 2 guys, and they didn't do it. They just didn't do it. If we had them in 3rd and 16, that's 2 plays to get you to a win. That's 2 plays to get you to 3-0. And I don't even know how this is possible. 3 defenders running to each other. 3 of them. Not 2, 3. What are we doing? I don't understand. Dallas Goedert turns on the burner, takes him all the way down to the 10. Saquon runs it in. At that point, I pretty much thought, hey, you know what, go ahead and let him score. Let's go ahead and time on the clock. We just let them get the 2-point conversion. We glide down the field. Hey, a crucial 2-point conversion that if we stop him, we could have drove the length of the field and kicked a field goal to win the game. But no, we just say, hey, Saquon, go ahead. Lane's wide open for you, sweetie. There's an easy 2-point conversion for you, just like we saw in the touchdown. And I'm like, okay, you know, that's fine. We still got a minute to go drive the ball. But then the offensive line is already back in the locker room, changing into the street clothes and getting ready to go home. Derek Carr is back there by himself, having to run around and try to make plays. I feel bad for the dude, honestly, because he's letting the ball go. He's just trying to make a play. He's trying to throw to Rashid Shaheed, who, in turn, I hadn't even talked about him, was awful. Had 2 wide open touchdowns. I mean, I guess not wide open, but they should have been caught. These 2 balls should have been caught. I don't care if it was on Darius Slay. It hit you right in the hands. You should have caught it. There was one, but he was wide open in the end zone. Should have caught it. I don't care if the ball was a little underthrown. That is inexcusable from the past 2 weeks where you're just able to do great things. I don't understand how you take that big of a step back. Screwed my fantasy team over too. There, Alex, you happy? I had him in 2 other leagues, and he put a whopping 0 points. And I don't even have time to talk about another person on my fantasy team who wanted to have 2 great weeks earlier on in the season and put up 1 point. So
would that be Mr. Jameson Williams?
That would be Jameson Williams. Yeah,
yep.
I don't understand why Jared Goff doesn't want to throw to him anymore, but that's what happens. So yeah, my fantasy team screwed over too, and I'm unhappy about it. But as far as the Saints go, if they want to make the playoffs, if they want to win, we got to stop doing the crap we've been doing for the past 2 years, Dennis Allen. You got to finish games, son. I want to win. I'm tired of losing. I don't like losing. And in games like that, when it's in our hand and we screw ourselves, come on, man.
Well, I tell you what, if you don't like losing, come over to the Panthers. Even though this week, the Panthers do get a 36-22 win over the Raiders. Andy Dalton in the first half, 212 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. First time that has happened since Cam Newton in 2015. And then entire game, Dalton, 319 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and is the only quarterback to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns this season. Crazy. Chuba Hubbard, 21 carries, 114 yards, 5 receptions, 55 yards and a touchdown. Deontay Johnson, 8 receptions, 122 yards and a touchdown. 122 yards is a career high. I didn't think that really was true, but it actually is. Adam Thielen caught a touchdown, left the game with a hamstring injury. Old man put it all on the field, that touchdown catch. Michael Jackson, no, not the dead singer, led the team in tackles, 9 tackles, 9 of them being solo, and had an interception. Gray, does this prove this is a Bryce Young problem, or is it just a product of playing the terrible Las Vegas Raiders?
I got up here last week and said that I don't like the NFL, and the NFL is gone. I don't like watching the NFL anymore. I will start this by saying I don't like fantasy football. Fantasy football is ridiculous. Alex can tell you about what happened last week. That is
Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts threw a pick. Gray lost by a point.
By a point. Yes. But I love the NFL. This is great. I enjoyed that segment so much from Nathan that I was trying to hold in my excitement from that segment the whole time. Because it's so fun to see the Saints come back down to earth as a Panthers fan, and it's so weird to see us have a successful game. The Raiders are horrible. They're terrible. They are Giants and Panthers level bad. But you asked if this is a Bryce Young problem, or the Panthers' problems of the previous 2 weeks were Bryce Young's problem. I wouldn't go there. Where I would go is it's a development problem. The Carolina Panthers have a major quarterback development problem. Andy Dalton had success on a day where we played a horrible team, but Andy Dalton has already been developed as far as he's going to go. You know, this is a guy that's, in his later years of playing in the National Football League. He has had tons of experience on different teams, good and bad. Most of it's just kind of experience. But you saw him have one of his best games because the Panthers are not in a hole. They're not in a horrible situation as much as we think when we look on paper that they actually are. It's a development problem. And not only have you completely killed the development of Bryce Young by giving him 4 or 5 different play callers in under 20 games, offensive line has just been up and down and up and down. His defense doesn't know how to help him. His wide receivers aren't getting open. Not only have you ruined his development, but you've ruined his confidence. And Bryce Young is I think he's going to be a really good quarterback in the National Football League, and is going to go somewhere where he's going to be successful. And I'm excited to watch him play somewhere else, because Andy Dalton's the quarterback here in Carolina, and he's going to win MVP. 1-0.
Yeah. Speaking on the quarterback development thing, Gray, I think a lot of these teams really have to implement, if you want to call it the Chiefs model or the Patrick Mahomes model, whatever, where you sit your quarterback for a year, maybe 2 years, and you let them learn from an experienced starter, whether it's a great player like an Aaron Rodgers, or if it's an okay player, above average player like an Alex Smith, or even if it's an average player like an Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's not going to light you up, even though he did light up the Raiders, but it's the Raiders. They saw it. And Max Crosby was hurt, so that's a whole thing for them. But you got to develop these quarterbacks. You can't just expect them to come in week 1 of the rookie season and play like the number 1 overall draft pick should play. Rarely does it ever happen. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, he doesn't get talked about enough. Dude sucks. Dude's terrible. I was told he's the next best thing since Peyton Manning. Dude's terrible. He's rivaling Bryce Young for terrible stats. If you go look at their stats, very comparable. But nobody talks about Trevor Lawrence. And you had people talking about it's a race thing. I don't want to get into that. That's not my place. But to develop these quarterbacks is key for these teams. You can't just throw them out there week 1, rookie year, and expect them to play like Patrick Mahomes. They have to develop, learn the NFL, learn the play calling. Play calling is completely different in the NFL. A lot of jargon compared to college football. The speed's completely different. The players on the other side of the football, much more talented. You're not going against Mercer in a gimme game. You're going against a Max Crosby or a premier pass rusher coming down and bearing down on you in the backfield. So these quarterbacks need to learn and develop. And the Panthers have not given Bryce Young the ability to develop. They give him 4 games. Oh, let's bench him. Oh, let's put in Andy Dalton for 3 games. Oh, let's bench him. Put in Bryce Young for 4 games.
Yeah.
What are you teaching your quarterbacks? What are you teaching Bryce Young? We only want you when the quarterback plays bad. I mean, we don't want you when you play bad. We only want you in the good times. We want you in the bad. I mean, there's going to be rough points. You talked about it with Auburn, right? Bo Nix's freshman year made freshman mistakes. Well, Bryce Young is going to make sophomore year mistakes. And this team has got to be patient with him. If they trade him right now when his value is probably the lowest it will ever be, I will just cease to exist. I will fade away. I mean, I saw somebody on Barstool Sports say, trade Bryce Young now. Andy Dalton's playing great football. What are we going to trade Bryce Young for? 2nd-round pick after we traded DJ Moore, about 15 first-round picks for him? I mean, we traded DJ Moore and Caleb Williams, who's, right now, but he's a rookie. So I got to give
him time to develop. And it's like most NFL teams and NFL fans expect first-round picks just because they're first-round picks at quarterback to play like a first-round pick is going to play, week 1 or halfway through your rookie year or even into your sophomore year. Yes, you're right. These guys have got to have time to develop, especially under an experienced quarterback like Mahomes did with Alex Smith, or like Jordan Love did at Green Bay. I know he's injured right now, but that dude was not as successful at Utah State. It comes in, has time to develop, has time to work on his body, to get his body NFL ready, and learn, what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. And he's an MVP candidate last year. And he was going to be an MVP candidate this year, but then he gets hurt. So, yes, I think NFL fans and NFL teams need to lower expectations and understand that being an NFL quarterback, I know you get paid a lot of money, but it is still one of the hardest jobs ever because of what kind of transition you have to make from college to the pros when you go there. I think you should lower the expectations, let these guys develop into what they can be, because just like we've been saying, Bryce Young can and will be a fantastic NFL quarterback. Let him get there. Put the tools around him, let him get there. Don't throw him into the fire and ruin his confidence by benching him 2 weeks into the year when he's not doing as well as you want him to. I agree. It's a plague that has entered the NFL and into NFL franchises of just trusting that you've scouted the right quarterback and you picked the right quarterback and he's going to be fantastic week one. He's going to play like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, somebody like that, when he's not. And he could be if you develop him right in 2 to 3 years. But you got to do it right. Otherwise, you're going to ruin it right then.
I'm about tired of hearing the CJ Stroud Bryce Young comparisons, because if Bryce Young was in Houston, he'd be doing the same thing.
Same thing.
And CJ Stroud was in Carolina, he'd be doing the same thing Bryce Young's doing. I mean, you look at the game this past weekend, CJ Stroud did not play good football. And we're talking about, oh my God, CJ Stroud is the best thing since sliced bread. Well, he's going to have down games. Bryce Young, I mean, they're young players. They're learning the game. It's the hardest position in sports. I don't think there's any debate there. I think maybe the second hardest is maybe being a goalie in soccer. I mean, I don't know how those guys do it. But mentally, playing quarterback is the most difficult thing to do in sports. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching, students of the game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.